E3 2011.
Starhawk for the PlayStation 3. We're talking about it. The game is here at E3, making a big showing, a grand debut, and you guys are showing us a little gameplay, specifically the single player. I know this is a big focus for this IP. So tell us a little bit about what we're going to be taking a look at here, Dylan.
Well, so we've got multiplayer going on the show floor, but we wanted to show all your viewers single player right here. We get a lot of questions about that. You know, the last game we worked on was Warhawk. It was a multiplayer-only game, but Starhawk has a great solo campaign. We wanted to make sure people got to see it. Our producer, Harvard's actually playing through some of the solo campaign right now, and you can kind of see how we're interacting with the different elements in the game. Here, kind of the narrator of the game, Cutter, is walking through the different engagement zones where the player can set up offenses and defenses. And he's basically telling the player, hey, these things are going to happen in these areas, but then we give the player a ton of freedom. We basically say, okay, here are all the tools that you can use. You've got turrets and bunkers and walls, and you can call in allies. You know, we just built right here a communications relay that summons in additional allies. And so that brings in AI bots that will fight alongside him. So every time a player plays this mission, it can play out a different way because they can build up their scenario a ton of different ways. It's you know, part shooter, part RTS, part tower defense. It's got, you know, elements of even, you know, Plants vs. Zombies in it. That thing right there that he just grabbed was some hidden salvage. Throughout the solo campaign, there are hidden build and battle parts that players can find, and when they find them, they can build them. So there's a lot of little things that the player can uncover along the way.
Yeah, this build and battle mechanic is core to what Starhawk is all about. It exists both online and off. But speaking specifically to the single-player campaign, talk a little bit about, of course, coming off of Warhawk, which was a multiplayer-only title. Why is it so important to build up this single-player experience in a day and age where a lot of people are focused on multiplayer exclusively?
Right, and don't get me wrong, you know, we spend a lot of time and we focus on multiplayer. Multiplayer is the core, and, you know, the publisher loves to say that's the legs of the product, right? But the solo campaign does a number of things. It helps players understand the universe, the systems. But one of the things that we found in our focus testing was that in a really well-crafted narrative, you let players really grok and I just said grok.
I love that word.
Thanks. You can really get them to understand the weapons, the systems, and the mechanics before feeling like they got to go online and just get ravaged by faceless players.
Right.
And in Starhawk, players can level up in the solo campaign, get familiar with the game, unlock some of the skills, and then get comfortable and then go online.
So you highly recommend then that when people get this home, that they have the opportunity to experience the single-player campaign all the way through before embarking on their online.
Absolutely, and I guarantee a ton of players like myself will not do that, because if I get a game, it's like, bam, multiplayer, and I go right on.
Yeah.
But there are a lot of players that are going to want to learn more about the universe, more about the story. And, you know, as you can see here, you know, he's building up a set of defenses in one particular way. But the cool thing about Starhawk is a player can replay this mission, get additional XP and additional bonuses by playing it a different way. You know, he may want to attack purely from the ground, or build launch pads and take to the sky and engage mostly in air combat.
Yeah. Well, obviously, you know, at this junction, you just go down to E3 and you'll notice it's a very sequel-driven industry. So, as a developer, talk a little bit about the fact that this new IP affords you the opportunity to do a lot of things, to innovate within the gameplay space. What were those goals going into this project?
Yeah, I mean, that was giga huge. I mean, you've got the shooter genre, which is stacked, right? And you've got killer games like Killzone and Gears and Halo and Battlefield and Call of Duty. And so there's so many shooters, we really felt like in order to stand out, we needed to try to do something new. And that's why we ended up, you know, creating our kind of space western environment that you've got here. We created a really unique hero character, and build and battle is a really fresh mechanic just to try to do something new. We think the shooter genre really needs kind of a hot injection of that kind of stuff.
Absolutely, but who is this game really targeting in terms of the style of player? Because it does offer, you know, I would say light RTS elements that are very influential on the gameplay around you, but also, I mean, it's action at its core, correct?
Absolutely. I mean, its focus is shooter, absolutely. But it has, I think I read in the media one of the interesting analogies was, think of it as a shooter, but with some really great abilities that allow you to build structures.
Right.
And that's the kind of thing. It's not, you know, click and mine gold and harvest this and queue that or whatever. It's very, very fast-paced. And that's critical to make sure it's a shooter. Actually, when we were developing it early on, we did a lot of focus testing, as you always do with new games. And we always made sure that we focus tested people who love shooters but never played Warhawk, and people who had played Warhawk. So we could always make sure we were getting our core fans a game they'd be excited about, but we could also broaden our appeal to some of the bigger shooter demographic. And so what we found was a lot of shooter players, even if they never played Warhawk, were really looking for something new. You can jump into Starhawk, you'll grab the controls and play it and run and gun, just like you can with any other shooter. And then as you work your way into the build and battle, it really starts to carve a really unique space.
And obviously you have to be compelled to continue, and a lot of that has to deal with being interested in what's going on in the main character.
Right.
You stay with the main character, and there's a side story about his brother involved as well, correct?
Yeah, absolutely. Emmett Graves is a rift salvager. And one of the core elements of our game is the fact that when humans are exposed to rift energy, which is the very currency of the whole build and battle system, they become mutated. And what happened was, early on in Emmett's lifetime, he and his brother were working a rift claim that was run over by a outcast warband, these kind of the mutant humans that were transformed by rift energy. Well, as horrible as it was, his brother got exposed and transformed and became an outcast warrior. And so our story arc builds upon that, and it really sees Emmett as kind of this hired gun rift salvager end up killing and defeating all of these outcast warriors, and it turns out that it ends up pitting him right against his own brother. And so it's this classic Western tale of brother versus brother. And Emmett, at the end of the game, is faced with bringing his own brother to justice. What's left of his brother.
What's left of him. Obviously, people are being annihilated all the time here during this action sequence.
Right.
Talk a little bit about how that's happening with the weaponry. It looks pretty interesting.
Yeah, I mean, this is nuts. What you're seeing here is a really neat set of AI behaviors that not only can handle ground combat, but those ground troops know how to get into enemy vehicles, they know how to get into vehicles that you build for them, and at the same time, they know how to transform their brain operations into flying pilots. And so all of the gameplay is incredibly seamless. You know, it's not like a lot of shooters where there's kind of specific key set piece moments where now you're in this and now you're in that. You know, our producer could, you know, after he destroys his slaughtering all those guys on the ground, he could transform that Hawk and take to the skies and fly around. And in fact, you can see in the status bar that shows out all the build and battle stuff in the upper left, that always tells the player what's coming next. So he's got some aircraft coming in. He can hit transform on that Hawk and take to the sky.
So there's a lot of opportunity to be unique within the gameplay experience, within the confines of what you've set up here with these RTS elements.
Totally.
Correct?
Yeah, and you can see here, he's got his AI buddies are firing back at the aircraft. But if he wants to take to the sky, he can.
So is there, within that, is there an ability to have more of a defensive type of posture or offensive, or is it 100% up to the player?
It's really up to the player. A huge maxim that we've had on the entire development of Starhawk is allow the player choice.
Yeah.
And that's kind of our response to where the shooter genre is at right now.
Someone just got taken down there.
Yeah, he did. Well, what's interesting, he built a large, it's one of the heavier turrets, a beam turret. It's great against anti-air, and an AI guy is using it to attack air units.
Yeah.
And this mission, you can play all of these missions a ton of different ways. And not only is it cool, like from an emergent perspective,
right,
but we found that quite honestly, not everyone likes to fly, or not everyone likes to drive vehicles. And so we tested this game against a bunch of different players and found some people just like to be on the ground.
Yeah.
Some people love to fly. So we're really trying to get a big, broad audience with all the systems.
We're seeing the flying sequence there, and let me ask real fast, I mean, Warhawk, obviously, when it was released and announced, one of its big features was touted the 6-axis control, which is not included in this game, correct? Talk a little bit about why.
Yeah, we're not. Well, so our perspective on which technologies we choose to adopt is what is absolutely right for the player. And what we found is, based on our data, a large percentage of the players didn't use 6 axes. You know, it's a fun, buttery control, but the gameplay in Starhawk doesn't match itself as well. And so based on that, we said, you know, we're going to spend our development resources on other areas that are going to hit a majority of players.
All right, I believe we have some questions for you on Twitter. Justine, what do we got?
We have one from Yosef87, and they're asking, would you consider this game an action shooter or an action strategy? Remember Brutal Legend?
Ah, well, you know what? We often talk about Brutal Legend, and in fact, we talked with Tim Schafer at the Sony party, or at the Sony press conference last night. And I think that I loved Brutal Legend, but I think the most important thing there is that you be really upfront with the players, and you let them know. So at the core, we're a shooter, first and foremost. But we're showing players how our building elements are integrated right from the get-go. You know, all of you guys that were there at Austin for our unveil got to see how Build and Battle integrated right from the get-go. And so it felt immediately integrated, even from the core product to all of our marketing positioning.
More questions, Justine?
Yes, we have one from James V, and they're wondering, will we be able to pilot Starhawks in pure space combat?
Pure space combat. Of course. That's one of the things that our art team has an amazing looking space environment. And it looks really good, and so the Sony marketing guys and PR guys are like, well, that's an asset. We're going to wait to unveil it. But it looks awesome. And there are certainly great space environments. I would love to describe a little bit more. But Build and Battle, I will answer one question that always comes up, and that is, can you still build in space? And the answer is absolutely yes. There are still ways to build your structures while you're flying around in space.
We got time for one more question, Justine.
Perfect. We got one more from Jared F. Will the game be even more customizable than Warhawk was? If so, how much more?
So short answer, hell yes. So in Warhawk, you could customize, a couple things on your character. In Starhawk, you can adjust all kinds of different things, from boots to lower legs to arms to face to everything. And everyone in Starhawk, all 16 players on one side and all 16 players on the other, all 32 players can be completely unique, and all the vehicles can have a unique paint scheme. And in Warhawk, we only allowed you to put a paint scheme on the aircraft.
All right, it's sounding great. Do we have a release date on Starhawk?
I am told to say 2012.
2012.
So, right. Sometime it's like the apocalypse window, right? That's where all the great products are launching.
Well, look forward to it then. We appreciate your time very much.